The words consciousness is all there is. All pervading, omnipresent consciousness. The moment we hear these words, the mind becomes silent. Because if consciousness is all there is, then where is the scope for doubt, skepticism? The whole world disappears. The mind disappears. We always see the world with a limited, filtered perception. And that is why it becomes difficult to know what reality is. Because when you see objects, a lot of concepts are superimposed on those objects. For example, if I see a flower, I may perceive the flower as beautiful. But for some other person, the flower may not be beautiful. It may be ugly or it may be neutral. So we create realities through the filtered perception based on what we have experienced in the past. But there is something which is beyond the seer, which does not use any filters for perception. And that is consciousness. Consciousness which illumines you, me, and the whole world. Relatively speaking, consciousness is the first to shine. And the way you experience it in yourself is the I thought in all its purity. The I thought in movement becomes me. Me that identifies with a body, a mind, gender, a religion, work, and other things. And as this conditioning or the flow of life happens, the mind starts expanding more horizontally. And it starts creating division at each and every level. That is why when we see another person, what we are seeing is essentially our own self. The concepts that we have superimposed on that person. When things are seen in awareness, then there are no concepts, no images superimposed on the other. And therefore, the result is that there is no other. there is only the being. So recognition of being consciousness in oneself leads to the recognition of the same being consciousness in the others. Because everything shines in consciousness. You cannot recognize your body without the I thought. The body, the mind, shines in the I thought. And a very beautiful example was given by Ramesh Balsekar that just as electricity flows through each and every device, electronic device, gadget, and enables it to perform the function it was designed for. Similarly, consciousness runs through each one of us so that life as we know can happen. The consciousness does not differentiate between right or wrong. It is only the mind that creates these divisions, these segregations. Therefore, as an individual's identification with the mind deepens, the sense of personal identification or the ego strengthens, which creates a separation with the world. And in this separation comes the cycle of pain and pleasure. Now, the problem is that we identified as the separate entity, as the mind, try to avoid pain and cling on to pleasures, which is dualism. And rarely, but sometimes, the other way around is also the case. Some people cling on to their misery and avoid pleasure. It is not that frequent. It is not the case in many people, but it does happen that way as well. So Nisargadatta Maharaj said it very clearly that the river of my life flows between the banks of pain and pleasure. And suffering is clinging on to one and avoiding the other. When the pain and pleasure is accepted for what they are, it is then that one experiences true peace or true equanimity. Because the peace has to be found in the unpredictable and unaltered flow of life. Any attempt to control or manipulate the flow of life creates suffering. Therefore, for the sage, now when I say sage, I don't mean a person wearing robes. Sage is someone where this understanding has happened. For him, he or she does not try to break this link of pain and pleasure, good or bad, moral or immoral. For he knows that that is the flow of duality. And while he engages actively with the world in the most creative manner, he does not get involved in anything. So the involvement turns into engagement, which is more creative. Even if he does get involved, the involvement is for a very short duration, because an understanding dawns that what is being seen is not what is. We live in times where the information is so easily accessible, and the social media and other channels are set up in such a way that they create a polarization. So if you start following a particular belief, it keeps getting strengthened, reinforced, because the algorithms in this social media and channels, they serve only that content which resonates to the individual. But something very different happens in silence. In silence, there cannot be a notion of individual existence, because all of these problems, these identifications with body, mind, occupation, the world, they drop in deep sleep. There is no you in deep sleep. There is something very different in the dream state. The dream state has elements borrowed from the waking state, but the story is very different. Sometimes you are not even you as you imagine yourself to be in the waking state. And in deep sleep, there is not even the I thought. It is pure consciousness, the pure knowing. Therefore, there is no inference of time in deep sleep. You just close your eyes, you sleep, you dream, and then there is, at some point, there is complete absence of everything. And when the eyes open, everything comes back spontaneously. So in duality, we are living in the subject-object relationship. And what this message says is that, excuse me, what the message says is that there is no individual doer of anything. And Ramesh's favorite quote on this was, events happen, deeds are done, consequences happen, but there is no individual doer thereof. Now, for me, this understanding was a great change in my relationship with others, because the images that I saw around me as my relatives, my friends, my colleagues, that image began to dissolve. Now, it does not mean that there is no accountability or responsibility. What it simply means is that you don't create any kind of resentment, hate, ill will, spite, malice, or jealousy towards the other thinking that they are the doer of their actions. Because as Maharaj said, that there is no true cause to anything. The ego mind tries to affix the cause, because that is how it increases its sense of separation. So it says that so and so is responsible for my unhappiness. If nothing else, we blame nature. Today it's a rainy season, so I don't feel good. I'm depressed. But the ego mind likes to pinpoint the cause. But if you carefully see that everything leads to something else, so A leads to B, B leads to C, C leads to D, and so on. If you try to trace the cause, you will actually reach the origin, the Big Bang, the cause of the universe, or whatever it is. So when it is understood that the impersonal principle, the consciousness behind every object is the same, that recognition changes the way we look at others, the way we deal with people. It is not that I have to agree with everyone. It is not that I have to take nuisance from everyone. I can still hold my boundaries. But at the same time, I do not create hate for that person, knowing that he is not the doer of his actions. The way he or she acts has what been taught to them by the others, by their parents, their society, the kind of schooling they had, the kind of environment they worked in. So it is truly difficult to pinpoint one cause, one person. There was a time when I used to write about narcissism. And there was a topic where I was discussing about parental narcissism. And I was surprised by the amount of hate I saw in my comment section. People who were 60, 70 years old were actually cursing their parents. And I can understand that life could have been tough. But at the same time, holding another one, even when they are not there, through the threads of resentment and hate, is pain for oneself. As you know, as they say that it's like you drinking the poison and hoping the other person to die. It does nothing for the other person. The other person may not even be thinking about you. They not may even be concerned about you. It is you who are creating these stories about yourself, about them, about what happened in the past. So the recognition of this consciousness brings you to this present moment or now. It frees you from the burdens and the baggage of the past. And life is accepted the way it is. I think there is one quote. This is one beautiful quote by Robert Adams. And it says this: something within you that knows what to do. There is a power greater than you that knows how to take care of you without your help. All you've got to do is to surrender to it. Surrender your thoughts, your mind, your ego to the current that knows the way. It will take care of you. It will take better care of you than you can ever imagine. And to conclude, I would say a quote from Nisargadatta Maharaj, which is, the death of the mind is the birth of wisdom. Now, he's not talking about the mind that we use for creative purposes, that we use for thinking, critical thinking. He's talking about the mind that we use for self-centered thinking. Okay. If anyone has questions, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. Okay, 1 second, please. Yes, Apu.
Hi, Jagjot. So I had a question regarding the I thought.
Yes.
So can you throw some light on how the I thought originates and what sustains it? And is there a state where we ever lose the I thought? Like once you say, let's say, enlightenment, right? So let's say it's called the state of enlightenment, right? Do we ever lose the I thought in that when we attain enlightenment or like that?
See, the thing is that first I'll come to your first question, which is why the I thought is there. Now, all we know, right? All we know is that the I thought is there so that interhuman interaction can happen. Because without the I thought, no interactions can happen. For example, you are here asking, and I'm here speaking. Now, without the veil of consciousness, without the veil of individuality, communication cannot take place. So, for phenomenality to happen, I thought is required. And regarding the disappearance of I thought, now in deep sleep, there is no I thought. But there is something, otherwise you wouldn't know that you've slept. So, what remains in deep sleep is the pure consciousness in its pristine form. Now, enlightenment, as understood by, it's a very different concept because I'm not clear as to what people mean by enlightenment. What the masters say is that there is no permanent state. The I cannot be eliminated permanently. But yes, it does happen that at some point, the I merges back into the source, the pure consciousness from where it comes. But that is again a state. Now, the sages call it samadhi, emptiness, shunya, or you can give it different names. But the thought again comes back. But now, once the I thought itself has tasted what awareness is, what pure awareness is, there is a different quality to it. It does not expand in horizontal time as thinking. So that is what, if you want to say, that is what enlightenment is. But even for an enlightenment to happen, nothing can stop what happens in the moment. So the pain that happens in the moment will create sensations, uncomfortable sensations in the body. And the enlightenment cannot stop that. But what happens when the I thought has known its true nature, the pure awareness? That I thought does not cling to that pain in horizontal time as suffering. So that is the only thing. So was this was what you were asking?
Yeah, it was helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, there is a comment. We always tell whatever happens, happens for good, but it is to be told whatever happens, happens to happen, not good nor bad. Okay, thank you for that perspective. Okay, anyone else would like to ask anything?
Yeah, so I had one more question.
Yes.
So, so generally, when we say that awareness is a witness to all our actions, right? It tends to create an impression that awareness is passive. But that's not the case, right? Awareness is also a form of intelligence, right? Is it true? Like awareness is not just a passive entity, but rather also an intelligence.
Everything is made up of awareness. So awareness manifests as consciousness at rest, and same awareness also is the consciousness as movement. So everything, so that is, that is why I started by saying that consciousness is all there is, or awareness is all there is. So it is the potential which actualizes as the universe. Is that what you wanted to ask?
Yeah, so basically even our mind, whatever we think, whatever we do, ultimately it's all still coming from consciousness, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything comes from consciousness. Everything is consciousness.
So is it like once the consciousness, okay, so if the consciousness misidentifies itself with the ego, that's when suffering happens, right?
Yes, it is the ego only which identifies itself as the separate entity. It is not the consciousness which identifies, because consciousness is simply the flow. It is only the ego, the I thought, which identifies itself as the separate entity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
And it lives in that illusion. So it is the I thought only which has to get introverted. So, it introverts on itself. This is what Ramana Maharishi said, that, when, as we go through life and we see suffering, at some point, the mind inverts on itself. Mind is the I thought. It inverts on itself. And when it inverts on itself, what happens is that it cannot sustain, and subsequently it merges back into the source.
okay. But mind is still an activity of the consciousness, right? So that way, if you look at it, it's still
Yes, yes.
consciousness identifying with itself,
Of
right?
course, yes, yes. That is why mind is said to be the identified aspect of consciousness. And the pure awareness is the impersonal aspect of consciousness. But everything is consciousness. Everything is pure knowing.
Okay.
So in deep sleep, you don't experience the mind. But the underlying substratum of consciousness, pure consciousness, is always there. Waking, dream, or deep sleep.
So you made one point, right? The mind is the identification of the consciousness.
Yes,
Uh,
mind is the identified consciousness.
okay, so basically, identification is then like how do I put
Identification
it?
is the belief of oneself as a separate entity, as a name and form.
So is there ever a state without identification? But so there are two ways of identifying, right? One, either identify as the ego or recognize that you are the ever present consciousness, right? Either way, it's still an identification, right?
The consciousness is not an identification by the ego. The consciousness is the impersonal recognition, it is the pure knowing. You see, when we talk of witnessing, it is not that the individual mind that witnesses. The witnessing happens by itself. For example, when you are in meditation and you experience a thought, at some point, there is a remembrance, there is an instant remembrance that you are thinking, and in that instance, the thinking stops. So, that instant of recognition is not by the individual mind or ego. That is the impersonal aspect of consciousness, which is the witness. So, what happens is, and I will explain it the way Ramesh used to explain this, that when the mind struggles, and at some point, after suffering, it comes to this conclusion that there is nothing one can do about the situations. So, in that realization, a surrender happens. And the surrender is like this, that if I am not the doer of my actions, then who is this me? Now, when this question arises, who is this me? There cannot be an answer to this question, because any answer to this question, if we say I am Brahman, or if you say I am not Brahman, both of these answers are an extension of the ego mind itself. So it is not the thinking that comes to a realization. The realization is happening in the impersonal awareness, in the impersonal consciousness. Because when the I is still, it becomes one with the source. In fact, it is the source, the pure consciousness.
Okay, so I have related one question. It may sound stupid, but
No, that's okay.
So you said there is no doer, right? But there
Yes.
is action happening, right?
Yes.
So is it correct to say that it is being done by the impersonal consciousness?
Of course, everything is happening by the source. So Ramana Maharishi would, put it like this, that, everything happens by the light of the source. It is not that it is the source's intention to do something. Source does not have an agenda in mind. The consciousness never has an agenda in mind, whether to create suffering, whether to create floods, whether to create this or that. It simply happens. A flow is happening here, and that flow is giving rise to innumerable happenings. But the pure consciousness, the source, is always free from that. It is that, and it is free from that also.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anybody else would like to ask something? You see, what happens is that sometimes we tend to conceptualize this too much. This is something very difficult for the intellect to understand, because intellect itself is the mind, and mind is finite. Therefore, to make sense of how things are happening, why they are happening, is very difficult for the mind to conceptualize. And it is always that, mind always comes to fixed conclusions. It will always say things should be this way and things should not be that way. And that is what propagates suffering in horizontal time. The clinging to what should or should not be, rather than what is. Okay, so I think we can conclude today's session. If anybody would like to ask something, you can raise your hand. And this would be the last Sunday for this month, the last Sunday session. Next month, we won't have a Sunday session like this, but we will definitely have 1 or 2 talks. So, if you are on the email list or on the WhatsApp group, you you will get the notification regarding that. And if you have any question, anybody has any question, you can always send that to me on email as well. Okay, so there is one comment. Okay, by Shravanti saying, I'm singing. Okay, Shravanti, good for you that you're singing. You know, I sing too. Okay, so there is one question by Adrian. Just hold on, please. Yes, Adrian.
Hello there. I'm a latecomer to this program. I only got to know about it a couple of days ago. Hence, I registered on WhatsApp.
Okay.
I listened to your links off and on, and the last one was that kind of took me, that kind of resonated for me, was end of suffering, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And when I listened to that, I thought, well, right, let's hook into this. And when I say hooking, let's get to know. And first of all, how do you pronounce your name?
It's Jagjot Singh.
Jagjot Singh.
Jagjot Singh. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, I'm a latecomer, and also today I've tuned in at 10:30. It's now just gone 11 o'clock, and I'm in Sri Lanka.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think the same time as you there at the moment,
Yeah.
and then I go back to England, which is like 4.5 hours behind.
Right.
I find the talk very not only interesting, but things resonate, which I think is a good thing for me when things resonate, making me think. But you know, a lot of the thinking also is the thinking mind that we kind of struggle with, and I continuously have that. And I suppose one of the questions I do have is, one of the experiences I do have is like feeling very grounded before you go to bed. And then the next morning, everything sort of evaporates, and and I feel that I'm back to square one. And when you're getting out of the sleep, for me it's kind of a struggle until I'm awake, and after about an hour or so, things begin to make sense to me. But it is that initial waking when from the unconscious to the subconscious, and then you're conscious of where you are, and that's a very difficult. I find that a very difficult time to function, if you like, because everything perhaps seems dead or stagnant, if can I use that word?
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I think you kind of explained the last half an hour. I caught a lot of what you were saying, but again, you see, it's like the mind is trying to compartmentalize these things. But it becomes, what do I do? And when you keep saying this, and we speak about the untouched or the pure consciousness, and I think at times, and I think it's experienced, but then I think somewhere, or I don't know whether it was you who said that it's when you feel that you've touched something that you can't put words to, it is like a reflection of or enamorment of the source, if you like, of God.
Right.
And I wondered, and I just in the brief sentence, what do you make of that?
Yes. So, I have felt like that earlier, I used to have that kind of when you get up and things are dull, heavy. And the thing is, at some point, the whole struggle dropped. Now, I did not do anything as such to drop the struggle. In fact, I came to this realization that perhaps I cannot do anything to drop it. And in that, which is not accepted in the modern day, because these ideas are propounded that we must do something about the situation, and we never allow ourselves to suffer completely. Don't misunderstand me. If you know what I'm talking, we don't allow ourselves to feel completely. We are always trying to end the resistance. We are always trying to fight the resistance. But you see what happens when we just give up the resistance and let the thing take over, let it take over. Of course, if it is life threatening, if it is too overpowering, then perhaps you need a professional intervention, maybe a therapy, or any qualified to be with a qualified professional. But if it is here and you can feel it and you think you can bear it, then let that be for some time. Now, as what happens, the more awareness comes, shines into this happening, the happening of dullness, the happening of feeling low, it slowly starts to lose hold. Its hold, right? And then there is this sense that I am me, the personal entity is feeling this, that also starts to dissolve. Because deep down, whether you call it subconscious, unconscious, this sense of personal identification has penetrated deep into our psyche, which holds things much beyond the conscious surface. These identifications are much beyond the conscious surface. So, of course, sometimes that shows up as an uncomfortable feeling, as an uncomfortable emotion. And then, it creates more thinking. And then again, so again, this message is not a solution to that. This message is not a solution to that. It simply says that the ability to experience, to feel everything, that comes from that principle which is already there, which is there ever present, which is indestructible, which does not move, which does not have an agenda. And recognition of that principle begins to dilute these other things. It is not that one does not experience afflicting emotions. Even I experience emotional lows during certain days. But then in my particular case, I don't feel the need to do anything about it other than to simply allow things to happen the way they are happening. The moment I try to find a solution, I have a particular outcome in my mind that perhaps this is not conventional, this is not the way I should be feeling. There are so many factors connected to it. If you get what I'm saying, there are so many factors, so many forces which subconsciously act on us: the society, the children, the relatives, the people around us, the friends. And that all comes down to this concentrated version of me, the sense of personal identification, which has deep roots. So, of course, it does happen. When you're in meditation, you do feel good in meditation for some time. But then when you're back into the world and, with the regular people, and then someone cuts you when you're driving, and then again, it all comes back. That is all okay. That is all natural. So, what Ramesh would say is that whatever happens in the moment, in a particular duration of time, nobody can control that. Nobody can control what thought you create in the next moment. You cannot know what thought comes up in the next moment. It is only the doer entity, the doer principle within which thinks it can somehow control this mechanism, maybe control the thought, maybe push it down, or maybe, find an outlet, maybe find an outburst. But that doesn't do anything other than to just strengthen those feelings, those emotions. But like in my particular case, I was quite a reactive person. So in my particular case, what happened was that I came to this realization that I cannot do anything about this. It is not coming from me. I am not the one creating all of this. It just happens. When I wake up in the morning, I don't decide that I will feel like this. The feeling comes up. So with this realization that I am not the experiencer, I'm not the doer, I give up all attempts to block, to resist, and I let things be the way they are. And that itself brings a lot of relief.
Yes.
So that is the only thing.
You say, things have to happen. Don't block it by so and so. But what about focusing, letting your breath ground you when you're caught up in that?
Of course. No, that is fine. You can do that.
Fine.
That is fine. See, again, it is not that I'm saying that you should not do practices to ground yourself, to calm yourself. If you think a certain practice is helping you to ground yourself, calm it, by all means, of course, breath is like it connects the body to the mind. So it relaxes the nervous system. It is helpful. But that said, it is not going to eliminate the root cause of the suffering. It will just calm down the nervous system in that moment. And of course, it depends on the intensity of the emotion also. In some cases, the intensity is so high that perhaps you may have to take professional help as well.
Yes.
So when this understanding that it is not you who is initiating all of this, it just happened. It happened through years and years of conditioning. When this realization comes about, this itself becomes a freedom, a sort of a freedom from the content. Now, again, the things would still happen. The emotions, the painful emotions would still come up. But then there will be no entity coming up, by the name saying Adrian is feeling this or Jagjot is feeling this. It is just arising in consciousness. It plays in consciousness and it disappears in consciousness. So this message is not about, it's not about conveying that you should not practice something. Any practice that helps you, good lifestyle, one should follow that. But again, I don't see any of that as a solution to the problem. As they say, the questions are as illusory as the individual that is questioning it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So that is the
thing. I think but look, thank you very much. I think it's very helpful. And I noticed you were saying that this is the last of the program you have on a topic, on this topic. And I didn't quite get the last part. That means that next Sunday, there isn't anything.
Yeah. So next Sunday, I'm traveling actually. So next Sunday, we won't have a session like this. Next month is mostly traveling and, just busy with some personal stuff. So what I'll be doing is I will be keeping 2 talks. So there won't be any meditation in that, just talks and then question and answers, just like this. But I'll have to schedule that and then I will let you know in the WhatsApp group and in the email newsletter. That's it. Yeah, but definitely we will meet again.
Thank you.
Okay, Adrian, thank you. Okay, so I think we can end today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagjot.
Thank you. Thank you.